companies aren't going to do that. Their business plan is to wreck the earth. The government isn't going to do that. They're too busy taking money from oil companies.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on 22 cable stations from Vermont to New York City, on the web at thestruggle.org. We're also on YouTube. Our channel is Struggle Video Media. Just Google that word and you'll find us. We're coming up to 450,000 views. Featured today is the biggest climate demonstration in U.S. history. It took place on February 17th in Washington. It was in opposition to the Keystone XL pipeline that would be built to develop Canada's tar sands. The big organizers for the rally were 350.org and the Sierra Club. Bill McKibben of 350.org has warned that if we don't stop drilling and fracking and burning, we're going to be driving up world temperatures to agree that will be very difficult to maintain with human civilization. Think of your body temperature going up from 98.6 to 102 and staying there permanently. And as Hurricane Sandy has shown, this is not something for our grandchildren, but something for the world of today. We start with coverage of people who committed civil disobedience a few days before the rally, got themselves arrested. One of them was Bill McKibben. Then to McKibben and his speech in an interview I did with him just before the rally. And after that, Jacqueline Thomas, chief of a confederation of Indian nations in British Columbia. The papers, like the New York Times, claim that Canada wants this Keystone oil pipeline. But remember, that's just the politicians who run Canada, the people who have bought their way to office. There are also the First Nations in Canada, the Indians, if you will, whose land will be affected or devastated by tar sands development. Next is Van Jones, who was once Obama's Green Jobs advisor. He sends out a powerful challenge to his former boss. Then a bit of the march around the White House. Tens of thousands of people out there in the bitter cold. After that, we go to another rally, this one in Connecticut, calling for greater restrictions on guns in view of the massacre of children in Newtown, Connecticut. We'll show some of the signs used that day as backgrounds to remarks by Ron Pinciero of Connecticut Against Gun Violence. We close with an interview of Johanna Rivera, who is living in northern Iraq, and she's talking about water problems there and mentioning a court success. We begin in D.C. with acts of civil disobedience on February 13th.
We're here to remind everybody that the Keystone Pipeline has become the purest test that there's ever been of whether the president is serious about doing something about climate change or not. And if he does the right thing, it would represent an amazing turning point. It would be the kind of thing that we could hold up to the rest of the world.
50 were arrested that day, including civil rights leader Julian Bond and actress Daryl Hannah. Now, to the rally several days later.
This rally 50 years later is as important or more important as that rally then. Because while they were fighting for equality, we are fighting for existence. So that in 2063, 50 years from now, they will look back at this rally and they will see you up front and you in the back and you over here if we succeed in saying that this pipeline can't go, this pipeline does not exist, they will look back then and say thank you.
All I ever wanted to see was a movement of people to stop climate change, and now I've seen it. You guys look so beautiful. I've been meeting people all day. It's hometown heroes like our friends at Seacan. It's heroes like those people who've been blocking Keystone with their bodies down in Texas. It's people who understand that the fight against fracking and against coal ports and against taking the tops off mountains is ultimately the fight for a living planet. It's people who lived through Sandy and people who survived the drought, some of whom I got to go to jail with last week. It is the students at 256 colleges fighting the fossil fuel industry head-on to force divestment, the biggest student movement in decades. It is all of you. You are the antibodies kicking in as the planet tries to fight its fever. We have waited a long time to get started. We've already seen the Arctic melt. Our colleagues in 191 countries at 350.org tell us every day about some new drought, some new flood. Because we've waited this long, the easiest answers are no longer enough. We're going to have to start making tough decisions. Our theme has to be, when you are in a hole, stop digging. Above all, stop the Keystone Pipeline. The president can do that with a single stroke of his pen. And if he does, he will become the first world leader to veto a big project because it's bad for the climate. That would be a legacy and a signal to the rest of the world. And so we will keep making our case. We'll follow him and the Secretary of the State around the country. And as this spring goes on, we'll unite that fight with a focus on all the other holes we're still digging too. And as summer comes on, this movement will just pick up. I want everybody to circle those days toward the end of July that are on average the hottest each year. We're going to try and make them hot politically too this year. Maybe set aside a few dollars each week for a bail fund, okay? So far, we've been firm but peaceful, diverse but united. We have to stay that way because the job that we have undertaken is the most important one that any humans have ever been entrusted with. It is our job to make sure the planet does not catastrophically overheat. The oil companies aren't going to do that. Their business plan is to wreck the earth. The government isn't going to do that. They're too busy taking money from the oil companies. But history shows that though we're never going to outspend the fossil fuel industry, we can find other currencies to work with. Passion, spirit, creativity. The powerful love for the future that brought you here today. We can see in our mind's eye all the generations to come, and so we know why we fight. We can see the beauty of the world we've been given. The cold of a winter day, the color on an autumn hillside. And so we know why we fight. We know our brothers and our sisters in the poorest parts of the world are already suffering, and so we know why we fight. I cannot promise you we're going to win, but I waited a quarter century since I wrote the first book about all this stuff to see if we were going to fight. And today, at the biggest climate rally by far in U.S. history, today I know we're going to fight. The battle, the most fateful battle in human history, is finally joined, and we will fight it together.
James Hansen has said if the pipeline is built, it's game over.
He said that if we burn a lot of the tar sands, it's game over, and the pipeline is definitely a step toward burning a lot of the tar sands.
Well, if Obama approves the pipeline, what would the movement then do?
Well, we'll do what we can to. It'll be a real blow, but you know we'll try and slow down its construction and things. But we'll also understand that it means that we have to work that much harder to take on the fossil fuel industry directly, and we'll step up the pace of this divestment campaign that's already on 256 college campuses.
Now, I was looking at Hansen's book, and he sees a role for nuclear power as a way to stem carbon. How about yourself?
I think that most of the data right now shows it's too expensive to be a huge part of the solution. And I think we're ramping up very quickly on renewables, which is good.
You hope that divestment will shame or influence...
Weaken the political power of the fossil fuel industry.
What about an idea of saying this is an international emergency and these companies have to be taken over?
I don't see any particular appetite in Congress at the moment for taking over and nationalizing companies, but I could be wrong. You never know.
Speaking on behalf of the Yinka Dene Alliance from northern British Columbia, and Yinka Dene translates to people of the earth. I am part of the Dene people from the northern reaches of the Northwest Territories down to my cousins, the Navajo of Arizona. We formed an alliance to stop the Enbridge Northern Gateway project, which plans to bring tar sands oil to the coast of British Columbia, which will then be put on tankers to go to the Asian markets. The Yinka Dene Alliance is opposed to irresponsible, environmental, damaging projects that puts our communities, our water, our culture, our land, our fish, our animals, and most importantly, our plants at risk. It puts at risk my neighbors to the east of me that live at the tar sands. The government doesn't recognize these people, and these people have been dying of mysterious cancers. Their water is polluted, their animals are sick, and Mother Earth is sick. The Yinka Dene Alliance have never signed a treaty. We have never gone to war. We have never ceded our territories in British Columbia, and we never will. Under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, we have not, the Yinka Dene Alliance, have not given our free, prior, and informed consent to this project. I'm here to ask you and to ask the world to help us. The Canadian government has made it clear they will approve Enbridge. We need your help to stand with us. We need your prayers. I need somebody to stand with me as the bulldozers come. I'm laying down my life.
President Obama, all the good that you have done, all the good you can imagine doing, will be wiped out by floods, by fires, by superstorms, if you fail to act now to deal with this crisis that is a gun pointed at the head of the future. Everything you have done. History will judge you 20 years from now based on one decision alone. That decision is not in the hands of the Congress. That decision is not in the hands of any governors. That decision is not in the hands of any mayors or any dog catchers. The decision is in your hands, Mr. President. It's in your hands. Your hands. The decision to let this pipeline come through America is the most faithful decision you will ever make, Mr. President. It would be like jabbing a dirty needle into this country from Canada. It would be like lighting a fuse on a carbon bomb. That's what it would be like doing, Mr. President.
And they raised, I forget how much they said. It wasn't like a ton of money. It was enough to do it.
Marchers passed our camera for 20 minutes. Tens of thousands of people calling on President Obama to cancel Keystone XL. We have a lot more coverage of this on our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. Interviews, complete speeches, and the whole march. Check it out. Now to Connecticut, where over 5,000 gathered in the snowbanks to call for tighter gun laws.
Some legislators that are in attendance here today: Senator Don Williams, Senator John McKinney, Representative Gary Holt.
They say that this is the Connecticut effect, that you are the Connecticut effect. Let it pass and we will go back to the status quo. How dare they call what happened on December 14th the Connecticut effect? They want guards in the schools and armed principals and teachers. Tell them that a poll of Connecticut teachers showed that 85% were opposed to any proposal allowing teachers to carry guns in schools. They say the problem is that the first grade classroom is a gun-free zone. How dare they call our first grade classrooms gun-free zones? Those are first grade classrooms. They're supposed to be safe. President Obama said on Tuesday night, Newtown deserves a vote. Well, if Newtown deserves a vote in Washington, they certainly deserve a vote in Connecticut. Sometimes you can just tell that the change is coming. And while every mass shooting is shocking in its own horrific way, this is the one that makes us sense that change is coming.
I'm speaking with Johanna Rivera, who's a former grad student at UConn, a native of Puerto Rico, and has been living for several years in northern Iraq. And her field is in chemical engineering, and we're going to talk about water. So the last time we talked, we did an interview, I think, when you were in Iraq, and you had done a press conference in Sulaymaniyah. Let's review for everybody who may not watch every single show. What is the problem with water?
Yes, so in Iraq we have one of the ancient rivers of the world is the Euphrates and the Tigris River, and this river permeate life and culture in Iraq, are the main source of water in this region, which was called Mesopotamia, which means the land between the two rivers. So the two rivers are the Tigris and the Euphrates. And the Tigris and the Euphrates had been contaminated? Contaminated, yes. Well, by war, during the invasion, there were many treatment plants that were destroyed, and the wastewater was dumped into the river. And lately, and what we've been working with is damming of the Tigris in the Euphrates upstream by Iran and especially Turkey. Turkey has been building a big project called the GAP, the Southeast Anatolian Project. In Turkish is the GAP project. Been building around 22 dams in the Tigris and the Euphrates. And that has caused a lot of problems in Iraq and Syria, the downstream countries, especially a high saltwater concentration, because the water gets concentrated, and the
So this is at the end where it touches the sea. The sea pushes back and puts in salt.
Well, that's one consequence of the damming, because we have less water, so the seawater pushes into the river and salinizes the water. But one other thing is, like, the water gets more contamination, because whatever was diluted before, because there was more water, now it's being concentrated. So all the minerals and salts that are in the water, also product of irrigation that comes from different irrigation projects that go back to the river, pesticides and salts, they get higher concentrations. So from previous concentrations of, let's say, like 200, now the concentrations have become like 1,000 parts per million of contaminants.
And is this even a problem up north in Sulaymaniyah?
Yes, not that much, but in the south it has become a bigger issue because of the sea. Actually, when I was in the university, they still cannot figure whether the source of the contamination comes from the sea intrusion or from concentrated salts and other stuff. So still the scientists are trying to figure that out.
And you spoke about this in Basra at a university, I understand?
Yes, we were in Basra in October for a big workshop it was a non-violence conference, but we brought the issue of water, because we had a workshop on the campaign when running on Save the Tigris and the Iraqi marshes. So I was first in the Marine Science Center giving a lecture to the university faculty. And then we were running this workshop where we brought civil society to raise awareness about the issue of the dams and how it's impacting many aspects of life in Iraq. Natural resources, cultural heritage, because this area on the south of Iraq is thought to be the Garden of Eden, where the Sumerians were establishing their civilization. Environmental, cultural, and a human right, because water is a human right. And then if we have less water because of the damming, we'll have less agriculture, less fishing, and the livelihood of the Iraqi people will be affected.
I understand there was a court decision in your favor in Turkey recently?
Yes, on the beginning of January, on January 7th, the Turkish Council of State ruled that the Ilisu Dam was illegal or was built on illegal grounds because they didn't comply with the environmental impact assessment. So they're building the dam without really measuring the environmental effects, and this is against Turkish environmental law. So that was basically the ruling.
Is that it? That's victory, or is there may be more problems ahead in that particular dam?
Well, the court decision just says that they have to have an environmental impact assessment. I haven't met with my colleagues to discuss, what are the implications. And
so it happened while you were here.
Yes,
on a vacation, right?
But it's a victory. It's a victory. The Ilisu Dam has to be halted, and this is a precedent also for other projects and for the city of Hasankeyf, which is a cultural heritage for the Kurdish people in southeast Turkey. So it's a victory for Iraq, and it's a victory for the Kurdish citizens of Turkey.
Well, we don't have a lot of victories on this show. We talk about misery mostly. So why don't we end the interview here? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The corporate media tells from time to time of the horrific sectarian bombings that go on in Iraq, supposedly unforeseen results from our shock and awe liberation. They haven't been talking about the big demonstrations going on in Iraq against the government we imposed on that country. We hope to get coverage soon. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller, and this is The Struggle.
When the world has gone crazy and it's all becoming clear, when they're gunning down our comrades and it seems the end is near, as they're loading up the launchers for the tear gas grenades, we can take off our bandanas and kiss behind the barricades. When it's madness all around and you can see this at a glance, we will sing and we will cry, we will laugh and we will dance as they shout their marching orders beneath the helicopter blades. We shall seize the moment for a kiss behind the barricades. They will try to break our spirit, and at times they may succeed, but our love for the world is stronger than their greed. When the building is surrounded and hope begins to fade, in my final hour, a kiss behind the barricades. As the movement grows, there will be hills and bends, but at the center of the struggle are your lovers and your friends. And the more we hold each other up, the less we can be swayed. Here's to love and solidarity, and a kiss behind the barricades.